Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everybody to our Commercial and Strategy Committee meeting. I have no apologies. I'd like to welcome Wayne and Anne from our community groups. Firstly, I have no identification of urgent business, and I have no identification of matters of a minor nature. Is there any conflicts of interest to be declared in respect to this report? Thank you. I'll move on. Chairman's report. I had a raft of meetings, including a council meeting, a extraordinary tenders and procurement meeting, plus a standard one, an extraordinary people and capability meeting. I'll move my report, and Councillor Parker seconded. All those in favour? So moved. Thank you. Confirming the minutes of the 26th of July 2022. Someone and Councillor Booth will move those.
No, there's a problem there. There's a problem.
Okay, right. We're going to have an issue
now,
within there.
I chaired that meeting.
So sorry.
I chaired the meeting.
Yes. Yep.
I chaired that meeting. It says in the minutes that you've chaired the meeting.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Very good point. So firstly, we'd like to.
And that actually goes for all the, I guess I know that your name was mentioned in all the other meetings as well as being present, and then I mentioned you again in apologies.
Magic.
So, but, and the other thing was that I sort of asked some questions that in there that
haven't appeared, that are not appearing?
Yeah. So could I, what will I do? Can I...
We can't move the meetings the minutes as they stand at the moment, so they have to be.
No, I mean you'll be able to pick those up from the recording, so you can go back and change them and maybe bring them through to the next meeting. I would suggest.
Yeah, so we won't move these here. We'll bring this. We'll have to
maybe
bring this to the next
there's
meeting.
no issue with that, really, is there?
No, no, not at all.
I'll just ask it again in this meeting.
You're asking it again in this meeting in respect to what? So do you want to put to do that? You'll need to. Fantastic, excellent. So it's in relation to an existing report. So we'll hold up those minutes so that they record and reflect those who were present, and the questions won't necessarily need to go on there because you'll ask something and the relevance will come up today. Okay, so we'll move on to our reports then. Our first one, item 7.1 on page 13, financial report to the month ending June 2022. And I'd like to call Zora up to speak to that. Thank you. Thank you, Zora.
Thank you. So, excuse me. Talking to the June 2022 reports, I just want to note that obviously we are in the process of finalising our annual report. Therefore, these are interim reports for June. There are a number of items that finance are currently progressing. Some of the examples of which are around the revaluations of assets, financial assets measurements, provisions, employee benefits, also things like the internal charges and allocations of labour, capitalisation. So there is still a lot on the ground which needs to be completed before the year end. Noting on that, however, it's been a really good end of year interim results so far. So very good financial surplus as well as the balance sheet. In terms of the financial strategy, we're tracking really, really well. You'll see that right at the dashboard on page 1 of the attachments, you can see a lot of greens, which is excellent. In terms of the net debt position, obviously that's quite high compared to 2021, only because our capital expenditure has been much higher, which is credit to the team. We've actually arrived at 97% to budget on the capital expenditure. Therefore, when you see the strategy with the increase in debt, that's very reflective of where we're at. In terms of the debt to revenue ratio, also just want to flag really good. We've got 117%. Our council ceiling is 210%. So we have ended the financial year with a good buffer and a headroom at this present time. So coming to the financial results, the whole surplus for the year overall at this stage is 12.6 million, and so that's 6.2 million higher. There are obviously three very key drivers for that. They are around, one of them being the drivers around the other gains, which we've been speaking around the surplus of the interest rate swaps. The second one is in the other revenue and subsidies and grants as well. So those are the three key drivers. In terms of expenditure, 99.6 million. So this is 3.1 mil higher than budget. But on the reverse side, because we've had increase in fees and charges, the subsidies and revenue grants, that's accounted for that excess in expenditure. And at a high level, the finance costs are higher. However, again, finance revenue was relatively in par and higher as well. The last one I just want to highlight is the 73 million in CapEx expenditure. That's actually 59 mil last year this time. So you'll see that that's an incredible result actually overall. I do want to note that this is the 90% capital delivery that we estimated in the LCP. And so this is including that. So that's a really good result in terms of that. So I'm happy to answer any questions and open to the floor.
Thank you, Azora. And I'll open for questions. Councillor Piddington.
Thanks, Azora. Look, just a couple of questions. On page 20, personnel costs are over $500,000 unfavourable in recreation and leisure. Can you give a reason why? There's other favourable ones, but that means we've overspent $500K more than we thought in personnel on recreation and leisure.
Page 23.
Oh, sorry, did I say page 20?
Sorry.
Under personnel costs.
The personnel costs, yeah.
Through you, Mr Chair, can I assist the meeting here? When the costs are allocated, we would have to go back and do an analysis, but it may be where particular team members have been put in terms of their group, the actual against where they were planned to go. So there could be more expenditure there because we've incurred higher costs. There could be more expenditure there because in actual fact, when we did the plan, that a particular business unit was allocated to, say, something other than recreation and leisure, but when we're coming to do the reporting, that business unit is allocated into that, into recreation and leisure. So there could be a number of reasons for that discrepancy. We would have to go back and have a look at it. What we have tended to look at is the allocation of the remuneration across the whole organisation and the delivery of the services there. So without a detailed line-by-line analysis, we would be challenged to answer that particular variance at this point. And it could be that we have in other areas up service levels. It could be that there have been wage adjustments or something like that in there. There could be a number of reasons for that variance.
Thank you.
Councillor Booth.
I just see in the page 19, Seabay admission fees are 234,000 below budget, and then in another line down there in other revenues, Seabay facilities, commercial activities and higher income below, showing in the favourable. Does that mean, what's it, I mean, fees, I presume that's people who are coming through the door paying fees. Is that over a year, or is that that's for the
Over this
Year to date.
financial year, correct, yeah.
yesterday. And then what's the other one then? Commercial activities hire income, 202,000. Just a bit further down,
Oh, and page 19,
page 19, yeah, second item down on other revenue, 2.137k favourable, but it's showing below, showing 202,000 below. Sea Bay facilities, commercial activities and hire income.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think that will be in relation to the cafe at Sea Bay, and also the fitness centre. So those are the commercial activities so you've obviously got the people that come in, pay the money to go for a swim and those sorts of things, but the commercial activities relate to the cafe.
Right. Yes, yeah, right, okay, yep. No worries. And I guess the unfavourable other expenses, 2.5 million, waste minimalisation,
Page,
page 20.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So look, a lot of that is around the waste management and curbside recycling. So that was $1.6 million unfavourable variance, and there's been a new contract put in place, and so a lot of those costs are associated with that. There has been an offsetting revenue which covers that as well, and also within there's carbon credits of about 478,000 additional cost as well. So they roughly add up to the $2.5 million in that space.
Yep, okay, no, thank you.
any further questions, councillor Piddington?
Sorry, on page 25, professional and consultancy fees in total are $1.5 million over budget. So that's not what's spent, that's over what we budgeted for, including 662,000 in consultancy services. Can we have a reason why it's so large over what's been budgeted for? Oh, sorry, page 25, under corporate support. I mean, broken down, they don't look big, but when you add them all together, it seems like a huge amount.
Oh, look, I think through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, we can go and do the analysis. I think in part though, if we look at, and I'd need to get this confirmed, but if we look at the capital program delivery, then we've delivered around about $73 odd million. So that will have necessitated considerably greater consulting costs in order to make sure that the design or the consenting or whatever else has been required, they will have been incurred in that regard. Some of it is we will have incurred more because in order to maintain the level of service in some areas, if we haven't had the team members as employees, we've had to go and hire them as consultants or contractors or get the resource in some other capacity. So is that sort of activity that has meant or driven that variance? But in terms of without a line by line, I couldn't give it as to the specifics, but I would expect it to be those drivers. The reason I ask here around the consulting on the capital is to whether or not they've gone into the project costs and if they're reflected in here, so I would have, or whether they're in the P&L, so I would need to check that out in terms of where it's been allocated through the financial system. That essentially hasn't been allocated as a capital cost or as an operating cost. I don't have that detail with me.
Okay, but
Through to you, just to add on that, what we just said, actually, in terms of the internal vacancies, so you'll see that the personnel also has been behind due to vacancies, and a lot of the numbers that you're pointing at in this bullet point actually is offset by that. So we have had to have consultants in place of vacancies.
just on that beat, I wonder whether it's appropriate going forward, because there's some risks associated with that. We get some sort of report on how many consultants we have, where they're acting and what positions.
If the committee wishes to have that, we can go and obtain that information and present it if that's the request of the committee.
So at this point, look, and I've said this before, I'm not saying for a second that your questions are not valid at all. They are very valid. but we would like to have the answers to those so that we can all be edified as to exactly what it is. It puts our staff in a situation where they've got to pull out these things. If this is just something you've seen, fine. If you've known about it, please ask these questions in advance because they are valid, and they are valid, Councillor Piddington, so that our staff can pull these things out and we all get the benefit of knowing and understanding them. And and to your point in relation to the, that's a point well made as well, and there is no reason why we can't have that given to us at our next meeting. But please, in future, if you've got these sorts of questions, please get them to our staff before, ask the questions again so that they are able to be answered in full, and so that we all get the benefit of the outcome of that. Thank you. Councillor Boo.
I'm going to ask a question.
Thank you. That you've just come up with.
Actually, no, it's the same one that I asked
That's good.
last month.
So
Actually,
yeah, because we
which,
need to know
Jason probably knows what it is.
that. Yeah.
Around the value of the CCOs on the balance sheet, that being appear to be at book value, rather than what their true value is.
I think we need to be aware that this is the TDC accounts, not the group accounts. And so obviously when we do the annual report, we do the group, which includes the consolidation of Prime Port and Alpine Energy and Aorangi Stadium Trust. These accounts are the Timaru District Council, so this reflects our investment in TDHL as opposed to the value of the associate companies.
Value of the asset themselves.
Yeah, and so that was because there was some. I recall now there was some confusion last time around the balance sheet,
Right.
which you correctly raised around our value of the assets in the books at that stage, and so I think it's really the distinction between this is the council as opposed to the group, which we will report back as part of the full annual report.
Yep. So like when we're borrowing money, they would look at the entire group, as in to work out what the assets were. So I guess I'm just the fact that we can, if we were to lose 500 million of that number, we'd be looking to find something else to chuck in there. So I guess that's what I'm getting at. Thank you.
So that was one of the questions you asked in relation to the previous meeting. So let that be noted that that is that the one. Was there others that were still relevant in Etabin? Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Can I just ask, Councillor Booth, were you asking about the value of the measurement of those investments in the associates for the purposes of borrowing? Yeah. There's when we borrow based on our ability, on our revenue measures, because we can rate. Actually, the security that's taken isn't over our water assets; it's taken over our revenue streams. Yeah, so that's how we. That's really the security. So the debenture is effectively over things like our rate stream, and the reason being that it's a very secure source of income. Yeah, so when we, if and when those assets go, it's the loss of the 25 million or whatever in revenue that will hit our ability to borrow, yeah, as much as the asset.
Okay.
What actual fact is that going to do to our ceiling number for debt?
Yeah, so we have a soft cap of 2.1, which we set 2.1 times our revenue. So if we've got 25 million, there or thereabouts, Andrew, from our three waters sort of streams, 2 times that, and one would be sort of a bit over $50 million. Sort of 52 million odd dollars.
Microphone. Sorry. Yeah.
So that's going to reduce our number by quite a bit, then, isn't it? 25%.
No. Sorry, we get a roughly 25 million in revenue from our,
Yep.
trade waste schemes and water
Yeah.
charges. So because we have a revenue, our ability to borrow is 2.1 times our revenue. So on a sort of sort of rough analysis, you take the 25 million, multiply it up by 2.1, factor of 2.1, so you're a bit over $50 million that we can't borrow.
Yeah, so at the moment, we've got 100 million, say, is the number that we've roughly our income. So it's basically 210 million. And so when that drops back to 75, that's going to be around about, our limit will be, what, 175 million as 2.5 or 2.1. So that means we're going to lose, 40 million of headroom.
Yeah.
Or potentially a bit more, yeah. But yeah, sort of scale is correct. Yeah, scale's about correct. Sort of a quarter.
In saying that, just noting on the debt associated with Three Waters assets, it's actually probably relative proportionate because it's about 50 million worth of Three Waters debt anyway, I think. So although taking your point, it may not affect us as much as we think,
Right.
because it's actually in sort of line now, there and thereabouts where the activity lies, debt versus income.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Give or take a couple of percentage points. While I've got the floor,
Yes,
may I continue?
go ahead.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Look, I just wanted to say thanks to the team. I think 73 million is a pretty good success story, understanding that there is some ups and downs, and we understand the pressures, in some of that vertical build infrastructure moving forward. But I think it is timely to say thank you to the team to be able to deliver on that. And some thought we might have been pushing the barrow uphill considerably, and there was probably some nervousness from officers, and I know there's some pressures from the wider team to be able to deliver. But I think it needs to be noted and appreciated that the team did deliver on and above that 90%, which is pretty cool. So thanks.
Thank you, and unreservedly echo those sentiments as well. Thank you to you and your team. No further questions. I'd like to move and note that report, Councillor Gilchrist and Your Worship the Mayor. All those in favour? For, against? Thank you. Moving to report 7.2, and that's the vesting of the Pleasant Point Volunteer Fire Brigade fire truck display building. And Nicole's coming up to speak to that.
Thank you through the Chair, councillors and community board members. I've met with several people and have been out to the community board, Pleasant Point Community Board, to discuss the vesting. Those that have driven through there to Cave or Fairley will have seen the nice new building sitting alongside of the toilets, and purposely built to reflect the other pieces of infrastructure there, and the local volunteer retired, and I think some active members of the Volunteer Fire Brigade have come together, had many meetings, coffee sessions, dances, raffles, to be able to pull the money together to build the building. And they want to house their old and historic fire truck from the area, so that will go in there. The paper now is they would like to gift that building to the community and to Timaru District Council to look after that building into the future. And should the local fire brigade cease to exist and they disband, that they would like to vest the antique truck to our South Canterbury Museum for further care. So as the paper stands, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Lyon.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Nicole. All you said is absolutely correct. But the reality is that the community board is totally in support of this recommendation. That's first up. And the reality is that, as Nicole has said, that Barney Smith, a fireman of many years standing, has led a group of previous and current fire personnel on this project. They've done a wonderful job. They really have. The community's pretty excited about what's happened. They had a charity auction, like you say, in the hall and raised over 40 grand, and it's been a wonderful effort on their behalf. There's no question about that. But on the journey, there's things to be thanked, and Andrew Dixon was a particular help at the early stages when we were working with the reality of the land ownership. It was a wee bit of work to be done there, so I appreciate what Andrew did there, absolutely. And Simon Davenport has been really helpful on the way through, and of course, now Nicole. So I really do thank you for the support on behalf of the group that did the work to get this fire truck displayed in our town centre. And like you said, it sympathetically fits within the town centre. The building was built sympathetically with what's there, and they've done a magnificent job, the volunteers that have done this work, and I would find it an absolute pleasure to move the motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor in relation to both recommendations 1 and 2.
Yep.
And a seconder, Your Worship, the Mayor. Do we have any further discussion? Councillor Booth. You get one opportunity, thank you.
They mention the contents will be ensured by the Pleasant Point Fire Brigade. So will the fire brigade sort of maintain the whole thing?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Who's on?
Oh, hang on.
No, absolutely, Alan. They undertake to do all the maintenance on anything inside the building. This is about we're talking about vesting the building at this stage. So anything inside the truck and all that, the pump or whatever they've got in there, their problem, and it's their joy to maintain. It's their joy. It's their passion. So yes, absolutely, yeah.
Insurance of the building itself, is that what that we are?
That's the 2,000 to 3,000 per annum insurance capital upkeep.
Yeah. Realising it's a brand new building, so yeah.
Very good. All those in favour then of the motion? Against? So carried. And now we have no consideration of urgent business or minor nature. So what we need to do is we need to go back and revisit the minutes. Let's clear that up now as so that we've got that right. So we've made the necessary adjustments as to the attendance aspects to it.
So our understanding is, just to make sure we've caught everything, that your name was removed from the beginning as attending.
No, he was attending. My one.
Yes.
He was the chair.
Yes,
Yep.
that you were attending.
Yep.
And that the name was changed at the end
Yes.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
And were there
Course,
questions that you would like added in? Is there content you would like added in, or are you happy with it being addressed today?
Interesting.
Thank you.
Yep.
So those changes have been made. Are we happy to move forward?
So with those, subject to those changes, would you like to move that, Councillor Booth? So moved, and a seconder, Councillor O'Reilly. All those in favour? Against, so carried. Without any other matters, I call the meeting to a close at 12:46. Thank you.